on with his ministry. I do want to recognize some of the other guys on the board, though. And I'd like Dave Harris, if you would stand there, Pat Johnson, Marsh Gentry, and Don Ford is also on our board. So they are, just to keep them in prayer, as they help me out as we seek to do God's will. And I want to take the time, too, and also introduce our partner, Brent Edwards, who is the president of International Commission. International Commission is in charge of all the projects that we sponsor. They have the people on the ground that oversees and also administrators and helps train and teach these individuals that do the national projects. So we want to thank you for all the effort you all do, and God bless you.
Well, first of all, Neil, thank you very much for the opportunity for us to come and just talk about not just what Dick Senter Ministries is doing and International Commission is doing, but what God does. Still, because of you, many of you are involved in supporting Dick Senter Ministries, which I'll show you in a few moments, is a great investment. And so, Neil, thank you. And Mark, thank you. Having been a worship pastor for many years, I know that, as we used to call it, the real estate in worship is very valuable, so thanks for loaning me a little bit today. I am, of course, here to help you celebrate this very special day, recognizing the many years of service of Dick Senter in this congregation and in others. Dick joined the board of International Commission in 1986 and served until his health really no longer allowed him to be active. It was a long time, not too long ago. During the first of those years, as you've heard, he was serving as pastor of the First Baptist Church of Allen, Texas, just like the San Antonio area, in the Dallas area, a growing community on the north side of Dallas. And many of you are aware that Dick came to the role of pastor with a built-in radar for how to mobilize his congregation and others to get outside the walls and go and tell. His successor at First Baptist Church Allen is Chad Self, who's the pastor now, who likewise also now serves on our board. And he sent this statement at my request about his predecessor. When I came to pastor First Baptist Allen 22 years ago, the search committee described the church as a missions-minded church. That was due to Dick Senter's heart, example, leadership, and long-time involvement with International Commission. He too loved the world that God so loved that he sent his son. Brother Dick came to Allen 50 years ago. That missions legacy continues. This year, our church will send more people to more countries than any year in the church's history. All those to share the gospel and make disciples. International Commission continues to be a vital partner for us as a Great Commission church. I see still working to make us better disciple makers to the ends of the earth and across the street. And I would simply say, this, as the board has continued, did something really stupendous and really courageous, and with prayer. Because as I understand from Jim and others on the board, they could give them permission just to disband. And in fact, they did anything but that. They said, no, we want to continue your legacy. We want to make sure that it goes forth, and we want to even grow it, and it's continued to do that. I want to just give you a moment to kind of put in context what this end-to-end, national-to-national thing is, how it came about in our ministry for International Commission, and then just share a couple of other things for you. So watch the monitor.
As Christians, we have been collectively called to a massive task, taking the gospel message to the whole world. For over 45 years, International Commission has used a proven plan that mobilizes believers from the U.S. to take the gospel into all the countries where we are invited. Churches in these countries prepare far in advance by encouraging their members to pray for 10 unbelieving friends, asking God to prepare their hearts for the message they will hear. Once the U.S. participants arrive, they join locals in sharing the gospel with those on the prayer lists, using a variety of evangelism methods. We call this church-to-church partnership evangelism, and have seen God do amazing things through these international projects. Additionally, in 1992, political circumstances in some countries and God's providence caused IC to start a parallel plan to extend the reach of the gospel beyond international projects. By putting the task of gathering, training, and sending out church members in the hands of national leaders, God has used this plan to effectively reach more people for the glory of His kingdom. That model, partnership projects with non-U.S. team members, now creates and sustains the real, ongoing global reach of our ministry. National believers are responsible for hosting, enlisting, and training the teams. We call these national-to-national projects, or N2Ns. In 2017, over 200 N2N projects saw over 1 million make professions of faith. But there is more to the story. The primary evangelism method that we employ in both international and national-to-national projects is called Operation Andrew, a tool developed by the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association that we use with their permission. It is evident that this model of praying every day for 10 non-Christian friends in the months leading up to a time of personal visits is the primary reason for the incredible success we are seeing around the globe. In several countries, churches have realized that they do not need a formal project to pray for friends and share the gospel, but can make this a regular part of their life and ministry together. This has dramatically multiplied the number of workers worldwide, but also the number of decisions made to follow Christ. Decisions made from this year-round Operation Andrew work represented 2/3 of all those we recorded in 2017. This now third tier of IC's ministry should encourage every church to consider this as their own model for evangelism, not only abroad, but also here in the United States. Multiply is an appropriate word for how we view our work. National participants are like pebbles dropped into a pond of water. They have been trained and challenged to share their faith. They have been discipled to become disciplers. A virtual army of missionaries ready to be commissioned and sent out. Like ripples on the surface of the water, these national believers are continuing to mentor and train others who are then also mentoring and training. Every time we gather to share what God has done in more than 45 years of ministry, it is a celebration. And yet, as we praise the Lord for His great favor in the lives of so many, we must also acknowledge the reality that millions remain unreached. We ask you to join us in praying, giving, and going to make an eternal impact for the glory of God.
That is an appeal to you, but it's not an appeal from International Commission. It's an appeal that comes really out of the Great Commission. I think you're going to hear a little bit more about that later today as well. You heard just a few moments ago this mention of Operation Andrew. For some, they say, well, the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, that means you go and you preach to thousands in stadiums and all. That's not at all what happens. On an international project or one of the many end-to-ends that Dick Senter Ministries has supported, it's about going and telling someone, taking someone to Jesus. You're going to hear a reference in that in Neil's sermon in just a few moments too. It is about sharing with them what Jesus has done in your life. The Operation Andrew part is that, but it's also the prayer and preparation that goes on. So let me kind of put it back in context again. If you'll look here, here's just an image of our website. You can go, and we want you to go. If you'll go to that next one, this talks about the international projects here that we do. And you'll see on this next screen simply 3 little images of if you decided you wanted to go with us, and Jim has gone. Jim, I think you went to Mongolia, is that correct? Others have been to Hungary, other places. It is going and saying, I just want to tell my life testimony, my story about Jesus Christ. It's not hard. In fact, I can tell you as the president, I cannot claim this, even though I had the privilege of doing this. That happened 48 years ago, just the inspiration for our founder, Ben Meath, who's from Glen Rose and is back living there. That was all it was, so just go and tell what Jesus has done. But then as you heard and you saw, when we could not go places that, because of political crisis, God said, go do this. And in fact, this was just enable them. They've already learned, and so that's what Dick Senter Ministries, when Dick saw this, he said, What a brilliant, simple idea of sharing the gospel around the world. Each one of those projects costs about the same cost as sending one person on an international project. And they sometimes see literally thousands of people coming to know Jesus Christ. That's how you can be involved in that as well. Many people ask us, so what is the essence of what you do? This next slide will show you. It's hard for you to read, but the idea is there's preparation and prayer that happens before the team either gets there on an international project or is involved in a national-to-national project. That's key. Very quickly, I will tell you, when my wife and I were in Albania, every person that had been written down on a card, and they had prayed for them for about 9 months prior to the team's arrival. Every person, plus some family members who entered into the process throughout the year, prayed to receive Christ. Every one. There's 10 names on every card. And the reason that's so significant to me is we would go and just talk with people along the beautiful lake there in Pogradec, Albania. And others shared the same testimony. They'd go and they'd see friends and businesses, but perhaps they had not been prayed over for an entire year. 0. None of them prayed to receive Christ. It's important that they prepare. Then you're learning, and they're learning as they go through the process. That's that middle 10%. Go and visit them. Go and you've already established a relationship. And then finally, what happens afterward? Well, that's why it's church to church. We have the confidence that they have invited us, that they have prepared, and now they are there to continue to disciple. And I can tell you, I'm very, very excited. I can't even tell you what it is, but we're about to roll out another process that will be very intentional for churches called IC Must. And that stands for mustard seed. And that involves churches in the United States being involved in helping them disciple and plant new churches as well. So what has this particular Dick Senter Ministries? You've got that little folder. Look at this next slide here while I talk to you about this. You know, a lot of times people think, oh, when you talk about numbers of decisions and all, that's all you're interested in. No, but you have to give some evidence of what God has done. And it has been miraculous. That's a word that I don't throw around lightly, but I use all the time. I just told you, I've only been in IC for 3 years. I've been the president for 2, so I can't claim this. But when I saw the model, that was my first thought. This is truly miraculous, what God is doing. Our office is less than 20 people in Louisville, about 25 around the rest of the United States, and another 30 or so around the rest of the world. But you don't do what happens through IC's ministry just by those folks. It's mobilizing 682,000 people in 2017 to do the work. That's how you get to this. And so what did these guys take on? They said, no, we're not going to quit. We're going to keep going and we're going to grow. In 2018, they prayerfully sponsored 42 projects in 27 countries. And today, and I say that because because it takes a little while to get information from some of these places where they sponsor projects. Today, 1,259 churches involved. That's fairly significant. How about 251,379 decisions for Christ? And if you are prone to be, like so many, a skeptic, those again are places where people have been meeting one-on-one, talking to folks, and writing down their names and praying for them. Yeah, I saw somebody about to applaud that. You can go ahead and that was just last year on the projects that Dick Senter Ministries sponsored. Let me say that again. Just 2018 on the projects that Dick Senter Ministries sponsored. Part of 3.3 million decisions for Christ that I see this scene around the world. And that is significant that you guys have helped to do that. I mean, I can't say that enough times and cannot tell you how much it means to us. Because this really is God doing His work through His people in those countries around the world that have been enabled by who? By you. And equipped them. By the way, that one other little number there, that for just the Dick Senter Ministry sponsored projects, that was 45 cents per decision. In our world, we talk an awful lot about investing. I'd say that's a pretty good investment. For over 48 years, International Commission has, because of Truly godly, prayerful, wonderful leaders like Dick Senter and partners like the men who have continued his legacy on this board. They've been doing all we can to fulfill this mission, which comes straight out of the Great Commission. You see our mission statement there, equipping and enabling believers worldwide to conduct church-based evangelism projects to reach unbelievers and make disciples. We're glad that we're here today, right? In spite of the fact that we lost an hour of sleep, and it's drizzly outside. Listen to a report from a country leader about one of the national projects that Dick Senter Ministries sponsored last year. This is an area controlled by strict Muslim Sharia law and is a very rich area where their currency is very strong. A country controlled by, can't give you the name or the group. There are spies everywhere in this country ready to turn in Christians and imprison them at a moment's notice. Churches meet underground, not announcing locations for service until the very last moment. Doors are locked for services and there is no singing, so as not to draw attention to themselves. They are able to sometimes go to the jungle in nearby blank and worship with song. They have a leader who has been imprisoned for sharing the gospel for almost a year. The pastor, his name left blank, is a man grateful to IC that we are praying for them and supporting them. And I will add, obviously grateful to Dick Senter Ministries because you helped make this project happen. They felt alone, but now they are grateful we are partnering with them. They are using our principles and praying for the lost and training how to share the gospel. They have to be very careful, and any evangelism tools are easily detected and immediately reported. Their annual underground effort as an end-to-end is continuous. Until when? Until Jesus comes back. So there's a reason to keep doing it. Last sentence says, we were able to train more people and hear more testimony from leaders of the faith in this country on an ongoing basis. That's why it happens to reach unbelievers and make disciples. You are part of that. I want to encourage you to pray. We need that. To go as God will call you. And if you want, I'd be a lousy president if I didn't tell you. I have plenty of things here if you want to take a look at them. If you think God would have you to go. And certainly in this place, and thank you, all of you, to give. Watch this.